An old black janitor walked into a board meeting. Executives laughed until he slid proof across the table. The man they ignored for decades. He owned the company. Love justice served cold. Like, comment, and subscribe to support real stories where power changes hands in the most unexpected ways. Now let's begin. Otis Carter's mornings began before the sun. At 5:30 a.m., while the rest of Sterling Corp. slept, he walked the empty halls pushing a mop cart. At 68, his hands were slower but still steady. He moved with quiet grace through the building that forgot his name. Outside the CEO's office, Otis paused. Ryan Sterling's nameplate gleamed on the door. Otis unlocked it and stepped inside. He emptied the trash, dusted the desk, and glanced at the photo on the wall, Ryan and his father smiling. But Otis remembered being there, too. Just out of frame, Otis had stood that day decades ago beside Thomas Sterling when this company was only an idea. Thomas had shaken his hand and promised him a future. Ryan had cropped him out of the picture like the rest of the company had since. That morning, HR Director Patricia breezed past him. Otis, the executive bathroom mirrors are streaked again. Use the right cleaner this time, last week smelled off. Her words were sharp, her tone sharper. Otis only nodded. Yes, ma'am, he replied quietly. In the executive washroom, two young VPs laughed as Otis cleaned. He's got to be what 101 joked. Can't retire. Maybe he just loves bleach. The other smirked. Hey, old man, someone spilled coffee. Be a good boy. And get that. Will you? Otis kept wiping. The tiny insults didn't break him. They were just another brick in the wall built over decades, bricks of silence, dismissal, invisibility. Otis had borne them all. But this time he wasn't staying quiet. He returned to the third-floor janitor's closet, his sanctuary. In that dim room surrounded by supply shelves, he opened an old leather briefcase. Inside, preserved like treasure, were share certificates, original documents signed by Thomas Sterling himself. The papers were decades old, but the ink was clear. 51% ownership held in trust. His name, Otis Carter. Not a janitor. A silent partner. The man who had invested his life savings in a dream and had watched from the shadows ever since. He remembered the promise. This company is as much yours as mine, Thomas had said. One day, if I'm gone and they've forgotten, remind them who helped build it. That day had finally come. Otis closed the case and straightened his spine. Across the building, an emergency board meeting had been called. Ryan was preparing to cut 400 employees, liquidate assets, and cash out. Innovation was dead. Greed ruled. Otis heard them through the vents. He'd cleaned the floor above that room for 30 years. At precisely 10:17 a.m., Otis Carter stepped into the boardroom. No invitation, no announcement. Just a man with a mop cart and a locked leather briefcase. Executives froze. Then laughter. Lost old man Ryan sneered. Otis didn't smile. He stepped forward. Not at all. He opened the briefcase and slid a document across the polished mahogany table. The laughter stopped. Ryan frowned, reading. His face turned. What is this? Otis answered simply. Proof. Martha Donovan, a senior board member, leaned in. Her eyes widened. Is this real? She whispered. Otis nodded. Thomas and I co-founded this company. He lacked funding. I invested everything I had. He gave me 51% in writing. I kept silent out of loyalty. But loyalty doesn't mean watching something you built be destroyed. Ryan tried to regain control. This is nonsense. You think a janitor can run a company? Otis stood tall. No, I know a janitor can own one. Panic rippled through the room. Otis calmly laid down more documents. Trust agreements, registration filings, proof of filings with the SEC. Not just symbols. Legal authority. Ryan's face went pale. One board member chuckled nervously. This has to be a scam. Martha silenced him. These are real. Thomas's signature. These were never revoked. Her eyes met Otis's. Why now, he said. Because yesterday I heard you planning to fire 400 workers like they were nothing. I've spent 35 years scrubbing these floors, watching this company betray every value Thomas and I built. I've had enough. Otis's voice was calm, but each word landed like thunder. Ryan tried one last move. Security, he snapped. The guard entered, paused, then nodded to Otis. Mr. Carter, not janitor, not old man, Mr. Carter. The guard had seen the documents, and he wasn't throwing Otis out. Otis turned to the board. As majority shareholder, I move to suspend the CEO pending audit of corporate finances. Martha seconded the motion. Hands raised. The vote passed. Ryan Sterling was out. Otis stepped forward. From this moment on, Sterling Corp belongs to its people again. The room was silent. Then Martha stood and clapped. One by one, the others followed, and Otis Carter stood at the head of the table. News of the boardroom bombshell spread fast. By noon, employees gathered in clusters, whispering, checking their phones. Did you hear Otis, the janitor? He owns the company. Some dismissed it as rumor. Others, stunned, recalled every time they'd ignored him. Otis didn't return to the CEO office that day. Instead, he walked the halls in his old uniform. Not to clean, but to remember. Every floor he'd polished, every conversation he'd overheard, every plan made under the assumption he was nobody. He made his first move that evening, canceled all layoffs. A company-wide email went out at 6:03 p.m. All scheduled terminations are frozen. No one will be fired until further notice. Expect updates. O. Carter, majority shareholder. At first, many thought it was a prank, but then HR confirmed it, then legal, and finally payroll. The decision was real. Hundreds of employees who'd packed boxes expecting to be let go suddenly had their jobs and hope restored. The next day, Otis arrived at 7 a.m. as usual, but instead of his mop, he carried a notepad. He met with janitors, then with line workers, receptionists, engineers. What's broken? He asked. What would you fix? They answered. For once, someone listened. Ryan Sterling didn't go quietly. He lawyered up, claimed fraud, appealed to investors. But the documents held. The law held. The truth held. And most devastating of all, the employees held firm behind Otis. Martha, the senior board member, stood by Otis. She remembered Thomas. She remembered the day Otis wrote that first check. You saved the company before she told him. Now you're saving it again. A week later, Otis held his first company-wide meeting. Not in a boardroom. In the warehouse. Folding chairs. No suits, just people. He stood without a microphone. I've been called invisible for 35 years, he said. But I've been watching, listening, learning. I was a janitor, but I was also an engineer, a partner, and the man who helped build this from the ground up. This company forgot its roots. I didn't. We're going to fix that together. He outlined his vision: fairness, innovation, sustainability. Profits, yes, but never at the expense of people. This isn't charity, he said. It's justice. Applause erupted. Not polite, but real, honest, earned. Ryan tried to crash the meeting, cameras in tow, claimed Otis was unfit to lead. This man cleaned toilets, he barked. Otis turned to face him calmly. And you flushed our future. I kept it clean. Who do you trust more? The crowd stood with Otis, literally. They rose from their chairs and faced Ryan. It wasn't security that made him leave. It was silence. The kind that says, you're not welcome anymore. Otis got to work. He reinstated the R&D team, reopened the internship program, invested in safety, set up scholarships. And every week he sat down with someone new from any department and asked, what would you change? His past became legend. The janitor who owned the company. But Otis hated the spotlight. Don't tell my story, he'd say. Tell theirs. He handed reporters to engineers, receptionists, cleaning staff. They're the reason we're still here. Profit stabilized, then grew. Slowly at first, then faster. Investors took notice, not because of gimmicks, but because of grit. Otis didn't promise miracles. He delivered results. He brought back Thomas Sterling's founding vision. Innovation with integrity. Success with soul. He restored forgotten ethics, and with them, trust. From workers, from clients, from the public. At a board meeting, someone joked, "You still taking out the trash, Otis?" He smiled. Always. Sometimes it just wears better suits now. He wore that suit humbly, but he never let it change him. He still had lunch with janitors, still knew the security guards by name, and every morning at 5:30 a.m., he still walked the halls, just to see. The day his name was added to the company's founding plaque, Otis stood quietly. No speech. Just ran his fingers across the engraved words, Thomas Sterling and Otis Carter co-founders, 1988. He whispered, "We made it, Tom."